continuing in the Sermon on the Mount, and last time I talked about Jesus' words about laying not up for yourself treasures on earth where moss and rust corrupt and thieves break in and steal. I want to just spend a bit more time on that, just a few more thoughts before we move on. But slowly, we're getting through the Sermon on the Mount, the greatest sermon ever preached. This is really powerful stuff from Jesus, and together we're trying to make a little sense of it. Hang in there with me, back right after this.
This year, share Christmas by changing the life of a child in Africa. For a small donation, you'll get a new school uniform, school supplies, all purchased locally to stimulate the economy. And the whole village will join in a wow Christmas celebration, all for just $25. This Christmas, give a child a celebration they'll never forget. Wow.
Just before I move on in the Sermon on the Mount, I want to just refer back to what we looked at last week when Jesus said, lay not up for yourself treasures on earth. The key value here that Jesus is stressing is sustainability. You know, there's a lot of talk about sustainability these days in the development world, and I have a lot to do with that because of the work I'm doing in Africa. You know, I meet with development experts. I've been in Geneva to meet with the United Nations. I met with the World Bank, people who, you know, are experts in sustainable development, and the word is always sustainability. And the question they always ask me in terms of the work we're doing in Africa, is it sustainable? And thank God I'm able to say, yes, it is. Why? Because the agents of sustainability, the people with whom I work and insist on working with, are local churches, their pastors, and their volunteer base. And in Africa, if there is anything that is sustainable, it is the African Christian church. It's on every corner, if you will. And I use that term loosely because there's not many corners in Israel or in Africa, especially in the rural areas where we do most of our work predominantly. But you understand what I mean. They're just everywhere. Every community has one or two or three churches, humble little places, often made out of mud with a straw roof. I've spoken in many of those churches. I love the memories that we've been building over the last 17 years. But the thing about it is sustainable work because it's being done by local churches. The local church has been in Africa for almost 1,800 years. Now, how sustainable is that? And when I talk to some of these multilaterals like the World Bank or the United Nations or to certain parliamentary committees and so on, and I bring this point out, they all look at one another and say, well, yeah, why didn't we think of that? So much money wasted out there in development. It could be so productively channeled through the powerful, motivated volunteer force that the local church provides in every part of Africa. But sustainability is the word. And what Jesus is talking about here is sustainable values, sustainable treasure. And so when he talks about, you know, some of the material treasures we have being subject to moths, to rust, and to thievery, he's talking about enemies, really, of sustainability. Rust, interestingly, in the Greek, brosis, essentially means an eating away, meaning it doesn't happen instantly, but slowly, increment by increment, the value of whatever that security is eroded. Thieves breaking through and steal, you might not appreciate this living here in North America or wherever it is you live in the world where you have access to us through the internet. But you know, in that part of the world and in many parts of the world today, houses are made out of earth. And so the actual Greek nuance here is thieves digging through those clay walls, which is very easy to do. All you need is a pick and a shovel, and away you go. So he's saying, instead of putting all your eggs in one basket, that basket being your material securities, look at something which is sustainable. And that which is sustainable, ultimately, is that which is spiritual. I often have said to wealthy people as they approach the end of their lives, you know you're not going to take any of this with you. And of course they know that. And they're wondering what to do. They don't want to give too much to their kids lest they spoil them. They don't know which charities to support, churches, whatever. I say that whatever you decide is up to you, but just understand something, that the only thing you can take with you is what you give away. So sustainability is critical to the Lord. The essential worldview here is that we're on a journey and only heavenly things matter. Heaven is where our treasure is and nowhere else. So I just wanted to add those thoughts to what I shared with you last week. Now, a few summary comments thus far in the Sermon on the Mount. In the first half of chapter 6 of Matthew, verses 1 through 18, Jesus essentially is addressing the religious life, whether it's prayer, fasting, whereas in the second half, verses 19 to 34, the secular life, he talks about our public life, our money, our possessions, our food, our drink, our clothing, our ambition. So what we're going to get into now is his comments with regard to our secular life, and that began with this business about treasure. But the secular and the spiritual do hybridize, and Jesus will be demonstrating that in the Sermon on the Mount as it relates to the countercultural nature of the Christian faith, where it is counter hypocrisy and counter materialism. Counter hypocrisy in verses 1 to 18 of chapter 6, counter materialism in chapters 19 to 34 of Matthew chapter 6. And so what we have in this chapter are two treasures on earth and in heaven, right? We have two realities, light and darkness, verses, we'll see that in a minute, 22 and 23. Two masters, God and money, 24. Two values, ourselves and God's kingdom, 25 to 34. And so we're going to be getting into all of that, but I just wanted to set it up so you can kind of be orientated in terms of where we're going next. So let's get to verses 22 to 24 of Matthew chapter 6. That would be here. Next slide. Let me get my pointer here. Okay. The lamp of the body is the eye. If therefore your eye is good, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. If therefore the light that is in you is darkness, how great is that darkness? No one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he'll be loyal to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. Mammon is money, all right? You cannot serve God and money. All right. First of all, darkness and light, before we get to money and God. You know, they say that you can look into someone's soul by looking into their eyes, and I'm sure there's a lot to that. I don't know how it works, but eyes can show brilliance of intellect. They can show dullness of intellect. They can show the sparkle of spirit, or they can show the depression of soul. Eyes are so expressive, and I don't think we understand how it is we read eyes, but we read them, and we're pretty good at reading them. Well, Jesus is simply saying the eye is not just something that reflects who you are, but it also is a lens, if you will, through which your brain and your spirit is engaged with the world. Now, Jesus says the eye is the lamp of the body. We often say that the eye is the mirror of the soul, and we can look into someone's eyes, and we see who they are. I don't know how that works, but it's amazing how perceptive we are. You can tell a lot by a person's look, what's in or what's not in their eyes. Well, there's something else here. It's not just a case of demonstrating who we are, but it's a case of how we see the world, that lens that it provides. And I guess the question is, in terms of darkness and light, as Jesus presents it here, is our eye clear or is it astigmatic? Astigmatic meaning, does it have an astigma? Does it have a flaw in the lens that, however slightly, distorts reality? I have an astigmatism in one of my eyes, and I think it's this one, and this lens, among other things, helps correct that, so that I'm not seeing a distorted view of the world out there. Well, we can ask ourselves a lot of questions along this line. Is my eye objective, or is it subjective? Do I have the maturity to discipline any tendency I might have to interpreting everything through my own subjective, limited, selfish needs? Some people never rise above that. Everything is seen and interpreted in terms of what's in it for them. And so they have a very jaundiced view of life because, generally speaking, they come out in the short end of it. That's how they see it. So are you objective or are you subjective? Are you others-focused or are you self-focused? This comes right along the same line. Am I looking out for my neighbor or am I looking out just for myself? That doesn't mean that you neglect yourself for the sake of your neighbor. It's not either or, it's both and. Important balance. But we must have that others-focused aspect to our sight, or we're going to have a distorted view of the world. Is our eye worldly or is it subcultural? And by that I mean, when I say worldly, does it take in the world? Do you see what's going on? I'm not talking about it in a negative sense. Are you observant? Now, a big part of that is being thoughtful and informed, spending time, either with those newscasts or reading the news on the internet or doing whatever you need to do to be informed of our world. Or is your vision purely defined or influenced by the subculture in which you live? Some people see life only through the lens of their little church, or they see life through the lens of their little social grouping. There's any number of ways that we limit our vision. And these are questions that we need to ask ourselves. Is our eye graceful or is it legalistic? Do we give people a benefit of the doubt or do we nail them? Do we hammer them if they don't fulfill our expectation of proper behavior? And you know what? This applies just as much to the secular community as it does to the church community. There's a lot of cause-oriented secular groupings out there who are very legalistic and fundamentalist, if you will, in terms of their intolerance of anyone who doesn't ascribe to their view of things, whether it's in terms of the ecology or in terms of music tastes or politics. They're right here. And that's all that they want to see, and that's all they want to do. If you don't fit in with that, you're judged. No grace there. Is your eye non-judgmental or is it prejudicial? Think about that one. Is it thankful or is it covetous? Are you never satisfied? Never happy with the car you're driving, never happy with the house you're living in, never happy with the spouse you have, never happy with the children you have, never happy with the job you have. You're always seeing the other guy having better than you and you covet it. Well, if that's the case, then your soul is going to be full not of light, but of darkness. Because with the subjective, self-focused, subcultural, legalistic, prejudicial, covetous astigmas, or I should say astigmatisms, your life is going to be full of darkness. Whereas if you're objective, you're others focused, you have an eye on the world, you're graceful, you're non-judgmental, you're thankful, your soul is going to be full of light. That's basically what Jesus is saying here. And so, moving on, he says, if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. That's just what I've been saying here. If therefore the light that is in you is darkness, how great is that darkness? No one can serve two masters. Either he'll hate the one, love the other, or else he'll be loyal to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money. He says if your eye is, I think in the King James Version, it's single is the term used. If in fact you've decided that you have a single purpose in your life, and that is to serve the Lord and serve your neighbor, to be righteous and just, rather than that of just simply serving money, then you're going to be on the right track. But if your eye is evil, in the Greek it means useless or incapable or bad, your whole life is going to be full of the darkness, the physical darkness, intellectual darkness, the blindness, the inability to see anything other than one's own self-interest. You're going to be not just thwarted, you're going to be misshapen by this poor vision. So sometimes in the scripture, the eye is referred to as the heart. To set the heart, to fix the eye, are synonymous in scripture. Psalm 119:10, with my whole heart I will seek thee. Okay? There's a mix of metaphors right there. Verse 19, I fixed my eyes on all thy commandments. So what Jesus is doing here is he's passing from the importance of having the heart in the right place to having a sound and healthy eye. There is a comprehensive worldview here that Jesus is trying to stress. And the Sermon on the Mount, more than any other sermon that's ever been preached in the history of mankind, really captures that moment.
The work of the Word of God is stunningly remarkable. We must understand that God has placed His life codes of salvation and healing in the books of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Jim Cantelon is focused on the messages that God has communicated through the Bible to you and me. Today, it's more important for us now that we learn what God is saying to us. God has placed us here now to be examples and to share the good news of His work with the world today. If you've heard the Divine Mind speak to you through this program, then God has worked in amazing ways to reveal His Word. Remember that this program has cost, and we have been faithful to God to bring this program to you. If you want to give an offering in any amount, we would appreciate it. Send to Jim Cantelon today, P.O. Box 989, Burlington, Ontario, L7R 3Y7. Or call us at 519-415-8341. Or simply visit jimcantelontoday.com.
Now, I didn't get to the last sentence in this passage, and I want to do it now because it has huge relevance to our lives. You cannot serve God and mammon or money. When he talks about a healthy eye, if your eye is good, or as I said in the King James Version, if your eye is single, your whole body will be full of light. He's suggesting here that one's focus in terms of vision is on serving one master, and that is the Lord. An evil eye is miserly and covetous, whereas a single eye, or a healthy eye, is generous. So he's describing, two opposites here. When he talks about serving two masters, in the original language here, to serve means to be a slave. And he said, and basically what he's saying is you cannot be a slave to two owners. It's impossible. You either belong to the one or you belong to the other. If you try to belong to both, there's going to be a big conflict and you're going to be the loser. Mammon, which, means money, in Jesus' time, mammon was seen as an investment, a nest egg or a savings account. In our terms, we may call it a retirement savings account, which we entrust to a banker for safekeeping. Kind of a rainy day safety net, as some people will call it. But over time, it takes on the meaning of that in which a man places his trust. On the American dollar bill, it says, "In God we trust." I think if truth be told, more of us should be saying, "In money we trust," because that's pretty much the way of the world. And so we have this conflict. We are conflicted. We serve God on Sunday. We serve mammon on weekdays. We serve God with our lips, mammon with our hearts. We serve God in appearance, mammon in reality. We serve God with half our being, mammon with the other half. And again, that Old Testament call comes out in a clarion kind of way: choose you this day whom you will serve. Now again, as I pointed out earlier, this is not an either-or proposition. Jesus is not dissing money here. What he's saying, what he is dissing is service of money. When you get right down to it, money should serve us, not us serve it. And yet many times that's exactly the impression you get, that people are serving their money. And as they justify or explain it, they say, well, it's for a rainy day. Well, what if it doesn't rain? Oh, it will rain. Really? But why borrow trouble from the future? We have no idea, any of us, whether we'll even be here a week from now. And you're going to imagine a moment in your life, 10, 15 years, 20 years down the line, where you're going to be dependent on what you are compiling now? You have no way of knowing. Well, it's like insurance, you got to cover the bases. Well, sure, okay. But what Jesus is saying is, look, the service of mammon is going to let you down, ultimately. The service of God is going to lift you up, ultimately. Literally, you're going to be lifted up into the presence of God when you die. At that point, your riches, your securities mean nothing. And just for perspective, the Bible talks about heaven having its streets paved with gold. Whoa, that must be amazing. Think this one through. This is a commentary on our values. Whole nations have risen and fallen. Millions have died in wars and conflict over money, over the control of money, the control of the mines, the control of the minerals, the control of the waterways, the control of this, the control of that, with the bottom line being gain, money, profit. And even to this day, we talk about the gold standard. Like that, that $5 bill, that $10 bill you have, it's just paper, but it represents $5 or $10 worth of gold. Well, the Lord takes our most valued possession and paves his roads with it in heaven. If that isn't a commentary on our values, I don't know what is. Here, we live for it. There, we walk on it. And don't even think twice about it. Far better to serve God, friends, than to serve money. Only you know who you're serving. You have a choice between treasures here on earth and or in heaven. A choice of two visions, where to fix our eyes, between the Creator and the creation, between worth and worthlessness. But remember, the eye is the optic nerve of the soul.
Remote and rural, these children and their families have no access to medical care. There is no clinic nearby. And when a mother is desperate to save her dying child, she will walk for many hours. Sometimes the child doesn't survive. So we go to them. These tables and chairs under the trees look like a gathering, not a medical clinic. But the doctors and nurses are transforming the lives of the children and their families. They provide primary medical care, classes on sanitation, medicines, and a better understanding of HIV and AIDS. Most of all, they bring hope as they diagnose, treat, and educate families. This clinic is a gift from donors that will transform their lives. You can become part of that transformation. Your gift of $25 will provide health care for an entire family. $100 provides care for 6 families. Be a part of real change. Go to wowmission.ca/saveachild.
Jim Cantelon has published a Bible commentary from the genealogies of Jesus Christ to the chosen disciples. This is an exclusive and amazing work on the life of Christ. From Matthew's chapter 1 to 4, this commentary is the only way to hear Jim on what Jesus Christ did and how the Lord revealed him to us, and what that means to us every day in every way. For your copy, we ask that you send your best gift to Jim Cantelon today. You can write or call or go to the website. Send to Jim Cantelon today, P.O. Box 989, Burlington, Ontario, L7R3Y7. Or call us at 519-415-8341. Or visit us at jimcantelontoday.com.
When you send in your support for JCT-TV, I send you this. This is the first installment of Cantelon's Casual Commentary. This is Matthew 1 through 4. I'm working on 4, 5, 6, and 7 right now. It'll be coming to you in the next month or so. All of you who support this ministry, it's my humble gift back to you. It's a way of keeping in touch. We really need you to help make this happen. And anything you can give to support this ministry will be gratefully received. Thanks for that, and thanks for watching.
Contact us. Jim Cantelon today, P.O. Box 989, Burlington, Ontario, L7R3Y7. If you're sending a check, make it payable to Jim Cantelon today. Or visit us online at jimcantelontoday.com and click Support.